And welcome aboard to another edition of MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week Podcast. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
Hello, Mr. Gary Mack. And only just a couple of more days until spring training starts up, though we wouldn't know it around the Northeast.
No, we just had some more snow and bitterly cold weather. It's I was out today trying to do some stuff, and man, was it a killer out there. But like you say, Rich, spring training, and if only we could bring that weather here.
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to looking at all of the pictures coming out of spring training, just starting up this week for most of the teams at the end of the week. And it's a great shot of sunshine because that's what we need, especially New York and Boston areas getting hit hard with winter, high winds, a lot of snow, and it'll be a great thing to welcome spring in.
And as you say, Rich, just to see that and dream about when that weather hits here.
Yeah, and just this past week I was at the bookstores and picked up a couple of periodicals as they normally come out around now. All the fantasy baseball books are back out on the shelf, so if you've been waiting to pick one up, now's the time. You can find out where all your favorite players move to and see the lineups and see what they expect these teams to do. And yeah, I've been waiting for this for a long time. I actually went to the bookstores a couple weeks ago and there was not one to be had, but this past weekend there was about 10 different titles out. So it's great to see that baseball's back.
Yes, and I just finished a book on Babe Ruth called The Big Bam, which was very good, and I've got a couple advanced copies of a book sitting here, so I'll be busy over the next few weeks, but it certainly is nice to actually have something to talk about that maybe it'll be some on-the-field stuff that we'll actually get to see. And it's good for us because we're running on fumes for getting material for our own shows, of course, Phillies Talk and Mets Musing. So it'll be good to have some actual camp stories or just something from spring training to sink our teeth into.
Yeah, anything. And let's get right into it with letting our listeners know. Of course, many of them do already know, but let's run through some of the top players in the league and where they ended up. Let's start off with Hanley Ramirez, last with the Dodgers. He was signed with the Red Sox for 4 years, $88 million. Russell Martin with the Pirates, used to be with the Dodgers many moons ago, signed by the Blue Jays, 5-year deal, $82 million. Pablo Sandoval, I saw him in a Red Sox uniform. Of course, he's moving over there from the Giants, and he too signed a 5-year deal, this one for $95 million.
And that's the one that's, I thought he would stay there. He's such a big draw there in San Francisco. Thank you. But it seems like he wanted to test the free market system and to get something, try something different. So we'll see when it's 30 degrees on opening day how he'll respond to that. But Pablo Sandoval coming to Boston. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. $95 million, I think, did that deal. The Giants did want Sandoval, but they just couldn't come to a money deal. Melky Cabrera, last team was with the Blue Jays. He signed with the Chicago White Sox. We haven't heard too much good come out of the Chicago White Sox lately, Gary.
Yeah, that's for sure, but they made some moves over the winter, and we'll see what's going to happen with them. And got some pitchers that signed too, Rich.
Yes, we do. Pitchers galore, as a matter of fact. And you want to take one or two of them?
Sure. We got Matt Scherzer, who signed with the Washington Nationals, And John Lester, of course, was really the first big pitcher to fall. He signed with the Chicago Cubs, and James Shields signed with the San Diego Padres, and they all got well paid, and really going to make their teams improve a lot, Rich.
Yeah, it's going to be a whole new look for a lot of these teams. Of course, you're used to seeing some of these players in certain uniforms. Here's Nick Markakis. He was with the Orioles for a few years, 30 years old, signed by the Braves for 4 years, $44 million. A lot of people aren't too hot on the Braves, though. For some reason, they don't seem like they got the moves that they needed to make in the offseason.
Well, it's hard to figure out what the heck they're doing over there. They got rid of some of their best players, Upton and Hayward, and they lost McCann last year, and so it's kind of strange to see what they're doing. They're trying to add, but they're also subtracting. So I don't know what direction they're going in, and a lot of people picking them to be last or next to last in the NL East, and I hope those predictions come true.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of the teams that made great deals this offseason was the Miami Marlins, picking up some great names in the offseason, and they just got awarded the 2017 All-Star Game as well. So it seems like the Miami Marlins are on the rise again.
Yeah, Marlins, that's big news, 2017 All-Star Game, but that adds the question. That's the third. It will be the third year in a row that the National League home team or the National League Park has the All-Star Game, and that's a little confusing. Who knows what baseball's up to with the new commissioner?
Yeah, that's for sure. And there were some words about that in the last couple of days, and they have an answer for that. Of course, a lot of the National League teams made good pitches to MLB for the hosting of the All-Star Game, so they're going to even the playing field. And you have that story for us first up. What kind of moves is the new commissioner going to be making?
Well, a couple. We talked a little bit about the All-Star Game, and I'll get back to that in a second. But he's weighing the idea of shrinking the strike zone. And, it's no secret that offense has declined across Major League Baseball, and they want to get it. They want to get a rise, I guess, in offense. And that kind of scares me in a way because, I hope they're not considering the designated hitter in the National League, because that would just be a travesty. It's already a travesty bad enough in the American League, and to move it to the National League would be a tragedy. But what they're looking to do is the Rules Committee is going to look at the size of the strike zone, and it wouldn't happen this year. It wouldn't be till 2016, and see what they can do about enforcing it more, I guess. Rich, why don't we just go back to the days when they did enforce it? It's shoulders and knees, and just enforce that. And let's see what that's going to do. I mean, they're really making it. At one time, they wanted it to be a pitcher's game, and now we seem to be in a renaissance where we're getting a lot of young pitching and a lot of good young pitching, and now they seem to want to go back to the offense again. For those of us old enough to remember when Gibson dominated back in the 60s, they actually lowered the mound because the pitches were so far superior, and now they're don't want to go back to that, so they're going to look at the strike zone. So it's all about getting more offense into the game. And the other confusing thing that baseball is doing, we talked about it last week with the time clock potential of putting a time clock on pitches. Now the All-Star Game as we said, that the next 3 years in a row will be in National League parks, but the American League is going to get to bat last, and in San Diego in 2016, and that really makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's sort of an olive branch extended out to the league that did not get the All-Star game. But as you said, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I guess Major League Baseball had to do something to compensate for choosing a National League park 3 years in a row. But I guess there's a reason for that too. There's a lot of buzz around National League parks. A lot of the parks are newer than the American League parks, and they have more to offer baseball. And that's one thing that the new commissioner, Rob Manfred, said, that the All-Star game is a game that needs to be presented properly, and whatever city does that is going to get awarded the game. It's not so much the team that's represented, but it boils down a lot of the times to the city. But I'm pretty impressed with some of the moves that Manfred has already instituted. It seems like he had them locked up in a suitcase somewhere, and as soon as he became the commissioner, he opened the suitcase and it just popped out like a he's already done a lot of stuff.
It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? And I think they're really, as some people have already reported that, and he's even said it, Manfred, that he'd like to see a city's bid on the All-Star game, much like they do with the Super Bowl, and who knows? That could leave it open to a lot of different things. Would buildings outside of the U.S. bid on the All-Star game, and it just seems to be too messed up, though, if they do that. I don't know. It's just going to be very confusing, and if you're a fan of the San Diego Padres and you've got the All-Star game and you go and the National League is wearing away uniforms, it's just going to be, I don't know. To me, it's going to be confusing, and yet you want to keep that intact. Maybe what they should do then, instead of letting them wear their home uniforms and away uniforms, they should come up with with uniforms anyway for the home run derby and everything else. So why not come up with a special uniform? Every other league does. For the All-Star game, have an American League and a National League uniform.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And getting back to some of the mandates of Manfred, he's got a lot on his plate, let alone the strike zone in baseball. I kind of think that baseball might be going towards an electronic strike zone, saying that we all know that most of the umpires have their own ways of calling games. It depends who's umping behind the plate most of the time with what's a strike and what's a ball. It could be right down the plate, right above the knees, and some umps call it a ball. So as you said, Gary, yeah, I think they need to, if not establish a new strike zone, make it more standard amongst all umpires, because every umpire has their own individual style of calling balls and strikes.
Well, I guess it's all about where you stand and how you see it, and like it or not, it does bring the human element to the game, and we don't want to lose that human element. If we do, I mean, then you could, set foul poles with lasers and have electronic systems, I'm sure, that come out of home plate that would read a ball and a strike, and you probably could have sewn into the uniforms. You could have sensors that would, sense where the chest and the knees should be, and I mean, there's probably all kinds of crazy things you could do. You wouldn't need umpires. You could put sensors in the bases, and when a guy steps on, and in the gloves, I'm sure there's technology for that.
In the baseball itself, now that you mention it.
There you go. Oh shit, could you imagine that? The guy hits a home run, you get an automatic reading back of how far it went. I mean, it's this probably the technology is there, and who knows what may happen in the future. But I
Yeah.
like the human element of the game, and look, they brought in replay, but replay is not such a bad thing because most of the time it does show that the umpires are right.
Yeah, and it does, as you said, the technology can go so far, but it still is a human game at the end of the day, and um, they should leave it that way most of the time, really.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on that one, and leave it the way it is. Let's not get too crazy about it.
So other issues that Manfred is dealing with already, Pete Rose's name has come up as he looks to get back into baseball. Of course, he'll be at the All-Star game in Cincinnati in July, so it'll be interesting to see how he is dealt with down the road, whether he will be accepted back into baseball. And I really think we've talked about this a couple times on our shows, Gary. I really think it's time for that. Allow the man to get back into baseball for the accomplishments he made on the field before he became a manager, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
And you can put restrictions on him. I mean, you could you could say he can't manage, but he's 70 years old. I don't think he's going to want to manage anymore. Really, it's just to get him on the ballot for the Hall of Fame, and even then, it'll be curious to see, does he get the full, does it start like he just retired 5 years ago and he gets that full time, or, because I still think this writers that will not vote him in because of the gambling, but like I said, just finished this book on Babe Ruth, and boy, the guys in that era, they all freaking gambled. I mean, if you went through the Hall of Fame and pulled gamblers out of there, you'd have like maybe 5 guys in there. And I'm talking the greats. I'm talking about Cobb and Speaker and Ruth and just some of the immortal names of the game. So, I know it's a bad thing, and I know it shouldn't have been done, and I know he lied about it, but it's time. It's time already. What are you going to wait for the guy to die and then say, okay, now we can approve him for baseball and his name can go on the ballot. But I think he has to apply, so perhaps it's up to him.
Yeah, that's true. We'll have to see how that shakes out, and always pros and cons towards that, of course. We'll have to see what happens with it. We want to thank all of our listeners for joining us here on MLB This Week. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and over at Podomatic.com. You can also find our podcast on BaseballTalkRadio.com. It's the home of great baseball talk, plenty of baseball, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including Gary's Mets musings and his upcoming Brooklyn Cyclones podcast called Cyclones Fevercast. There's a couple of other minor league baseball talk shows on that, as well as the Braves, the Phillies. There's a show that I do there, and all kinds of teams, even some foreign podcasts, Japanese baseball, and European baseball, believe it or not. Not too many people know that there's a good flourishing community of baseball in Europe. So tune in over there to BaseballTalkRadio.com and get your fix of baseball talk.
Especially in this cold, nasty winter weather.
Yeah, still hanging on for us.
Yeah. And Rich, you had a story about Andrew McCutchen, and he had some comments.
Yes. In addition to that story, of course, Jackie Robinson West, the Little League champions last year, were stripped of its title. Andrew McCutchen weighed in on that. He became the latest person to share his perspective on that. And Also, he has weighed in that baseball hasn't been very kind to lower income players of all types. He grew up in Fort Meade, Florida, town of over 5,000 people, and he claims that baseball has turned its back on a lot of folks that don't have a lot of money. They don't have money for baseball gloves, things like that. And you kind of hate to see this kind of a story. I don't know how they welded it into Jackie Robinson West being stripped of its title, because that's sort of a different story in itself. They supposedly recruited players from outside of the area there in Chicago, where this Jackie Robinson West Little League Championship is from. But so they obviously violated the rules. You can't scout players for the Little League. But McCutcheon put his 2 cents in and actually just complained a little bit that, a lot of the lower income people are not getting a fair shake from baseball itself.
Well, I don't, I don't know how baseball could give you a fair shake. It's not a societal thing. It's not, did we have anybody get a fair shake? I mean, we had to save up and get gloves. Everybody saved up. Guys were dirt poor. Again, going back to the 20s and the 30s, and a lot of those guys were right off a freaking farm, and yet they played baseball. I don't know. I think it's a societal thing, and I think it's a problem when baseball players are saying that they want baseball to give more. I don't know what more they can do. What does the NBA give them basketballs? And the NBA is an inner city game because it doesn't take up a lot of space, and you need a basketball. That's it.
Yeah.
Baseball, you need a field.
A field and some people to go out and play. A lot of the kids today are tuned into their electronic devices. They could care less about baseball, whether it was free or gloves and hats and baseball bats and things like that. I guess it depends where you're from. As you said, when you're growing up, you get a baseball glove. If you have to borrow one, you still can play baseball. So, yeah, I think a lot of that argument from McCutcheon goes a little south there. But as you said, Gary, nobody's playing the game that's super rich when they start off, but he's just putting his 2 cents in, trying to maybe get baseball to get a better program to get youths of all types involved in the game.
Well, I know MLB does have some inner city programs, and I think part of his argument was that these travel teams, they don't have the money, the low income players to go on the travel teams and when they travel to pay for the hotel and everything like that. But you know what? Maybe we should do away with these travel teams then and go back the way it used to be, where you played in your local neighborhood and the scouts came around and you got noticed in high school that way. I mean, and forget all of this travel team stuff. And if we did do away with all the travel team stuff, maybe you'd see less injuries, because these guys are getting pushed and these kids are playing maybe too many games. And but I know Major League Baseball does have some inner city programs. They're trying to get the inner city youth to play more. It's a tough thing because of, again, the space. But Rich, I grew up in New York City, and we played slap ball, we played stoop ball, we played stick ball. So
probably.
Yeah, and all you needed a rubber ball and a mop handle. So which you'd steal from your mother and saw off the end, and there you go.
Yeah. So interesting there. But even more interesting, Jackie Robinson West, the Little League champion, stripped of its title, and I totally agree with that. I feel sorry for the players on the team. They didn't have anything to do with it, but it was the organizers of that team and going out and recruiting players that did not live in the area in which that team was even from. So, I mean, that's the rules. It's not like Major League Baseball where you're going to go out and scout the best players around and put them on the team. So, yeah, I side completely with the Little League International's decision on that to award Las Vegas, the Mountain Ridge Little League team, with the U.S. title.
And I agree with you 100%, Rich, because as you said, you feel bad for the kids, but you know what? The kids and the parents that didn't live in the area had to know that something was wrong. Or, you know, and if the organization said, well, no, we're going to change the rule, which is essentially, I think, what they did. They changed the boundaries for this one team or whatever to get players into it. The players, maybe not, but the parents should have known something was amiss. And it just, I agree with you. They should be stripped of their title, though. You see, the message we send out is not good. The mayor of Chicago now is going to award them championship rings, which apparently they had it planned to do for quite some time, and because he doesn't want to gyp the kids out of these rings. But what is that teaching them? It's not, you know. Yes, they had nothing to do with it, but their organization cheated. But the government, the city of Chicago, is going to say, well, they might have cheated, but we don't care. We're going to give you rings anyway because you really went out and won. I don't like that message. That should have been dropped right away, and you know, when this happened. To me, it sends a twofold message to these kids that it's okay to cheat almost. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, I think you're right. I didn't hear that portion of the story, but maybe these rings were already paid for by the city. What would they do with them? Just, you know, hand them out at Wrigley Field as a souvenir to 50 lucky people or whatever. Keep the ring. They were stripped of their title officially, but that's the way it goes. You got to follow the rules, whether it be in Little League or Major League Baseball. But moving on with the show here, MLB This Week, we want to let you know you, the listener out there, can now support the show. Just go to our Patreon.com page. You can find that at Patreon, patreon.com/MLBThisWeek. And if you can't find that by typing it in, you can check our website out at MLBThisWeek.com. You can have a link right there each show we do. If you want to buy us a cup of coffee a month or something like that, we're taking on subscribers. So we appreciate everybody listening out there. We'll use the money for the show. We're going to plow the profits right back into the show with equipment, things that we need to do the show, occasional ticket here or there for Gary, and maybe even, like I always say, a new hat for Gary, or maybe even myself.
Yeah, so we hope you'll donate.
Yeah, be the first, because we haven't had one yet, and we've been talking about this a couple shows. Your contribution will be noted on the Patreon page. It will not go unnoted. And we have different levels of participation. If you have a business or a service and you want us to mention it on the show, we have a growing listener base, so we'd love to mention your service or business on our show. You can become a sponsor, and there's different levels. So check out that Patreon webpage. You can find out how you can sponsor the show. And Gary, the Blue Jays were the winners in an arbitration case. Not too many times a team actually wins those.
Yeah, and you know you're getting close when arbitration results are coming out. All-star third baseman Josh Donaldson lost to the Toronto Blue Jays in a salary arbitration. He was awarded $4.3 million on Friday. It's not such a bad loss by the committee that heard the case, and he had requested $5.75 million, but the Blue Jays were victorious. So, as you say, you don't hear a lot about that. Or is it really losing? I don't know what he made last year, Donaldson, but I'm sure it's a hefty raise over what he made. So is there really a loser in this situation? It's hard to say, Rich, but we would take $4.3 million, wouldn't we?
Yeah, to play baseball, yeah, any day. And as you said, Gary, arbitration hearings must be pretty interesting because evidently you have to present your case that, yeah, you're worth more, and I guess it boils down to numbers and things like that. But it must be interesting to sit in on one of those cases and hear exactly what they talk about.
Yeah, I would imagine. And Rich, if I may just change the story here for just a second. This story I just saw it, and I don't know if you saw this about the late Ernie Banks at all.
Yeah, I did happen to see that this afternoon.
And what it is basically is that there's a fighting over his remains. Ernie passed away a few weeks ago, and apparently now his estranged wife filed a petition to prevent a woman who describes herself in the documents as a longtime friend of Ernie Banks, was his caretaker and the executor of his estate. She doesn't want him cremated. The wife doesn't, and the woman, Regina Rice, asserted her rights to dispose of Banks' remains after his death last month, and but Elizabeth Banks is fighting this and has apparently got a stay on that. So, this is kind of reminiscent, not as wacky, but a little reminiscent of the Ted Williams situation. And what a shame that the guy can't go to rest in peace. I don't know. What are they going to do? Is she going to have the body mummified and show it in Wrigley Field or something? I don't know what the point is with this whole thing, but I guess she doesn't want it cremated, or she doesn't want this woman to have the right to do not that she's going to do the cremation, but to go ahead with this. But look, it's what Ernie Banks wanted. If it's in his will and she's the executor, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd story, of course. And as you said, we do hear these type of stories come up from time to time, even superstars and legends like Ernie Banks was. But we'll have to see how this works out. I know in the past there's been other stories like this, but we'll just have to see how the courts rule on this and see what happens with it.
And Rich, it might tie into your last story of wacky team promotions for baseball fans. Maybe they'll have a mummified Ernie Banks night or something. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. It's wacky baseball promotions. These are just a couple of more, I'm sure, and this will be a staple of our show going forward for the year. It seems like a lot of the baseball clubs now are doing whatever they can to interest more fans into coming out to the ballpark. And the Washington Nationals released their 2015 promotional schedule last Friday afternoon. And they're going to have more than 20 giveaway dates, which is about average for most major league teams. But this year they're going to have something very unique. Last year they had an Anthony Rendon garden gnome that they gave away, and this year they're going to have a Jason Worth chia pet that will actually grow a beard just like Jason Worth's. So it's going to be called the Jason Worth Chia Pet giveaway night. So I'm sure that's going to be very popular with the fans that show up at Nationals Ballpark.
I wouldn't mind trying to get tickets for that game myself.
I'm sure it's going to be a hot collector's item. But that's not all. That's just a Major League promotion. They also have a Star Wars Day, by the way. That's going to be a big deal with all of the teams this year. I think just about every Major League team is going to have a Star Wars promotion. But SB Nation, which is a blogging engine about baseball, had an article that said minor league baseball promotions must be stopped, and it's getting out of hand. And yeah, there are some crazy minor league promotions, as we talked about last year with your Brooklyn Cyclones. They had the Seinfeld night. That wasn't too bad, but just released in the last couple days a minor league promotion for the Akron Rubber Ducks. And what they're going to do is make a play off of NBC's Brian Williams, who, of course, had a come down with NBC and telling tall tales about a story which he supposedly was on a helicopter gunship that was getting fired upon, which was later to be determined that was a false report. They're going to have the Brian Williams Pants on Fire night on Monday, April 27th. There's a brainstorm with the general manager and a promotions coordinator there in Akron. And the first 100 fans on this night will receive a pair of suspenders upon entering the ballpark. On-field contests will include To Tell the Truth and Two Truths and a Brian Williams, also known as Two Truths and a Lie. In honor of National Tell a Story Day, a fan named Brian Williams will read tall tales at the game. Now, you got to be good to come up with this stuff. And in between innings, chants will give fans an opportunity to audition to be a television news anchor on the video board with the fan-voted winners' video sent to NBC. Also, a pair of pants from Williams will be burned in a pants-on-fire ceremony, quote-unquote, and any fan in attendance named Brian Williams will have a chance to throw out a ceremonial first pitch. So they brainstormed with these ideas and really making fun of Brian Williams here. But yeah, that's wacky promotions in baseball so far for 2015.
Well, Rich, we talked about this last week. Some of the most imaginative people are these young people that are getting into baseball on the minor league level. As you said, the Cyclones had the Seinfeld night that was very popular. I think they're going to do it again this year. They're also having a Saved by the Bell night this year, and last year they had a Nickelodeon night. I happened to be at that game, and they wore these outrageously Nickelodeon-style jerseys. The Cyclones they must lead the league in alternate jerseys, because they're always wearing different kinds of jerseys for these different kinds of nights. And then they raffle them off for charity. But you have to be quite inventive to make money, and that's what these minor leagues do. And they try to come up with some great ideas. And as I say, I think you are seeing some of these creep into Major League Baseball. And I disagree with SB Nation. I think it brings something to the ballpark. It just brings some excitement that may not have been there.
Yeah, it certainly brings some humor most of the time as well.
Yes, it does.
Rounding out tonight's show, I was on the Boston Globe website today, and they had a complete guide for Red Sox 2015 spring training They work out at a stadium called JetBlue Park down there in Florida, and they also call it Fenway South. And you'd be surprised to hear some of these ticket prices, Gary. This is minor league baseball down there in Lee County, Florida. Home plate dugout box is going to set you back $48 a ticket.
Wow.
Minor league ball. The Green Monster seating area, $37 a piece. A home plate box, $34 a piece. And a field box, $32 a piece. So those Boston Red Sox fans really must love their baseball, and especially that minor league baseball.
And is this just for the spring exhibition games?
This is just for the exhibition games at JetBlue Park there at Fenway South, they call it. Lawn seating available for $5. Not sure how much lawn seating they have there, but most of the seats are $27 and up. If you want to stand in the Green Monster area, you're looking at $15. So better bring down a lot of green when you go down to see the Red Sox this year in spring training.
And they used to say that they would charge these tickets to help pay for the cost of spring training and everything. But man, this is with the money that's in the game today. But this goes back to our discussion of a few weeks ago or last week about how the ticket prices are ridiculous, and this doesn't help to build the game at all.
No, it doesn't. And we'll see as time goes on, will they sustain it? Because I used to think the same thing about hockey and basketball when their prices were quote-unquote reasonable. They went up in price, and they really haven't lost too many fans. So not too sure whether or not baseball will either, but it's certainly a far change from the prices that existed just a few years ago.
Certainly true.
And you have our last story of the night here. A-Rod apology tour has begun, and yeah, that's all I've heard. And the good PR about this, trying to get the word out how sorry, quote unquote, he is.
Well, yeah, Rich, it's already made stops at MLB headquarters and the Yankee offices, where Alex Rodriguez met with owner Hal Steinbrenner and team president Randy Levine and general manager Brian Cashman. And the question is, where will it go next? The Yankees are anticipating some sort of news conference or a video apologizing to the fans for his actions. And if it's a news conference, I guess they're leaving it up to A-Rod. The Yankees are, of course, offering up Yankee Stadium as the venue. And this comes out of a story in the Daily News, the New York Daily News. And they go on to say that this is not really the Yankees being kind. It's just the Yankees wanting to control the media circus and to lessen that atmosphere that's going to go on, especially if it takes place in Tampa. Spring training is a little bit more wide open. It's not as closely watched as they can do it in Yankee Stadium. So I guess at this point it's up to A-Rod. He hasn't responded yet. So whatever he wants to do, if he wants to do anything to apologize to the fans, we'll have to wait and see. But it would be funny if he did some kind of video and if they played it like in the third inning of every game, in Yankee Stadium. I'm sorry, fans. I don't know, just my warped sense of humor, I guess. But the apology tour has begun. Maybe he's going to do it in every city. I don't know. Let's see. We've had the last 3 years, or the last 2 years, we've had the Mariano Rivera retirement tour. We had the Derek Jeter retirement tour from the Yankees. And now this year we may have the Alex Rodriguez apology tour. So stay tuned for this one.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure how deep that apology goes. He's made millions on the game, apparently has cheated, and I'm just not sure how how far that apology will go, especially with the sports writers. I'm sure they're not going to buy that. So that about does it for our show this week, MLB This Week. We thank all of our listeners for tuning in, and we'll be back with a lot of great stories on baseball next week.